I am Eileen Newcomer. I'm the Voter Education Manager for the State League. I know and recognize many of your faces, but I feel like there's some people who maybe I have not met before. So I'm really glad that you were able to join us for issues briefing today and had an interest in this breakout session and talking through how we can empower voters in 2022. I am going to share my screen, or at least try to, because I do have a PowerPoint. And so, as we all know, next year is a really important election year. I mean, we always say elections are important, and that's always true, but I do feel like next year is very important. And here in Wisconsin, we can expect to have at least 4 elections. 2 in the spring, where voters will make important decisions about the directions of our courts and local government. And then also 2 in the fall, where voters will vote on high-profile offices for U.S. Senate, U.S. Congress, governor, and a whole host of other very important state and local elections. With the 2022 elections coming before we know it, and the changes in our election landscape due to the pandemic, it's important to take time to plan ahead and take a hard look at our get out the vote practices and tactics to make sure that we're being as effective as possible on our mission to empower voters and defend democracy. During this breakout session, I've laid out a pretty ambitious agenda for us. So I'm going to be sharing some highlights of the State League strategic plan related to how we plan to empower voters in the next year. I'm going to review some of the growing library of resources that we have to offer local leagues and other partners who want to join us in our work to empower voters. Give a very, very brief high-level overview of some of the best practices for getting out the vote that you may want to incorporate into your programs. And then I want to end by hopefully having time to have a discussion with you all to talk through, what are some questions or concerns that you have, and have some space to learn from each other as well. So to just jump right in, the first goal that I want to give a highlight from the State League strategic plan is our goal to increase voter turnout. I feel like this is, kind of common sense for the mission of the league, but important to set as our intention for the year. So we are going to continue to focus our efforts on voter education, so providing information on Vote 411, having our voter guide available on there, create new materials, and also circulate some of the great materials we already have in existence, and focus on expanding the languages that we have our materials available in. So we know that there are a lot of people who don't speak English as their primary or their first language, as their native language, in Wisconsin, and so we want to make sure that we are meeting people where they're at and able to give them information. We also want to make sure that we're working smarter, not harder, and so you're really focusing in our collaboration with our partners. So that means all of you in local leagues, also our partners in the Disability Vote Coalition and the Wisconsin Voting Rights Coalition as well. We know that when we work together, we're able to accomplish so much more than if we are just like in a silo working on our own. We have also decided that we want to give particular attention to a few certain types of voters who typically are ignored by other get out the vote campaigns. So we're going to be focusing some time and attention on how to better support voters who are impacted by the criminal justice system. Those include voters who are in jail and are eligible to vote. So perhaps they've been convicted of a misdemeanor or are awaiting bail and have not been convicted of anything. Those people who are in jail are still eligible to vote, but oftentimes are denied their right to vote because they don't have access to the ballot. We also want to work with voters who have had their rights restored after they've completed their sentences. We're hearing stories of voters who are people who have completed their sentence 20 years ago, did not realize that their rights have been restored, and just found out that they could vote for the first time. And so we want to do what we can to decrease the number of people who don't know that their rights are restored and increase their participation in our electoral process. And then also we want to provide better support for provisional voters. And so these are people who show up to vote on election day and for the most part do not have a photo ID and are not able to successfully cast their ballot. So they're able to they're able to cast a provisional ballot, but it's not counted unless they provide a photo ID. A shocking number of provisional ballots are not what's called cured, where they're counted. And there's also evidence that suggests that a shocking number of people who are eligible to vote provisionally, which would give them more time to get a photo ID, are never offered a provisional ballot. So these are some ways that we are looking to increase turnout among particular subsets of voters as well. Another goal that I wanted to highlight for everyone is our goal to motivate voters to further participate in our democracy. So we know that voting is just is really the first step to being engaged in our democracy, and there's a whole host of other ways that people can become further involved. And so one of the ways that we're going to be doing this is focusing on the issues and providing educational resources and programs and opportunities for people to weigh in on issues that are related to the league's positions. We're also going to expand, like I said, the amount of culturally competent information and resources that we have available for voters who maybe are outside the mainstream as well. We're also working on a significant campaign to recruit poll workers. This is a great way for people to get involved who want to take the next steps and also help voters on election day. And we know from our election observation program that friendly and knowledgeable poll workers can really make the difference on election day. So whether that's helping people figure out what's an acceptable proof of residence document, or if it's greeting people at the door and making sure that they have access to curbside voting, or helping manage the line so that things go smoothly. So this is a real focus of ours this year. We also want to provide more support for young voters and strengthen civics education across the state. There's also data to suggest that if people start voting when they're younger, they're more likely to continue to vote and then also to engage further on the democratic process. So this is really a focus on that. And then finally, we do have a brief campaign around encouraging folks to run for office. This can be kind of tricky to do in the nonpartisan space, but we are going to be really cognizant to make sure that our educational materials are all nonpartisan, and so making sure people know what are the dates and the deadlines and just where do you go to find some basic information. But we also know, especially at the local level, so many races are uncontested, and so we will have more engagement and more voter participation if we have more competitive races up and down the ballot. Okay, and then the last goal that I just want to give a quick highlight over is to protect fair, easy, secure, and accessible elections for all. So this means advocating for voting rights. I don't know if anyone, well, I'm sure some of you were in the session with John Sherman and Mel Barnes earlier this morning about the legal strategy to protect voting rights. I know we work with them very closely on a whole host of different things. We're going to continue to advocate for voting rights in the legal space, the legislative space, and then also through things like our election observation program and our election, protection program as well. We're also going to be providing just, basic information about how the administration of our elections work, because a lot of misinformation comes from the fact that people just don't understand the process. And those things can be, if somebody is willing to accept new information, some of those non-truths can be easily dispelled just with an understanding of the mechanics. And then we also want to be sure to uphold and share out some of the best get out the vote strategies and tactics for all of our programs in 2022, and then also our election protection programs as well. And also recognize that due to the pandemic and other things that are occurring, just the landscape of the voting process and how to mobilize voters is constantly changing. So that was, a very quick overview of our plans. Now I want to make sure to go over with you all what are some resources that we have available for local leagues and other people who are looking out to get out the vote in a nonpartisan way. So I know sometimes people have trouble finding where these resources live. So I want to take the time to make sure to show you where they are. So if you go to our website, LWVWI.org, we do have a tab right here on the home screen for resources. And I'm hoping that you all can see the resources page now. Can you give me okay, I see some heads shaking. I want to make sure I'm sharing the right thing. So if you click on resources, you'll see that we have a whole host of different things. But we do have, under the heading of voter services resources, a long list of tools to help you. So we have a election messaging calendar, some information about election security in Wisconsin. We have election education resources. And I do want to click into this one because this is a really comprehensive toolkit that includes key dates and deadlines for all 4 elections that are coming up this year, sample messaging, graphics that you can use to spread the word. So I definitely would take time to take a look at this resource. I also want to point out the multilingual voter services resources that we have. So if you click on this link, it does take you to a spreadsheet that really has an inventory of all of the resources that we have available in various languages. So we have the most available in Spanish. We have some resources available in Hmong, less available in French. We also have some resources available in American Sign Language, but this is a space that will continue to build out as we get prepared for 2022. But there is already quite a substantial library of resources already available there. We also have some resources related to poll worker recruitment, various videos, information about how to run for office, and as well as some information about how to support voters who have criminal convictions. So that was, a really high-level overview of the resources. I really strongly encourage you to check them out, but I did want to take time to make sure that everyone knows how to find those resources. Okay, now the next thing that I want to mention is to review some best practices. And the information that I'm about to share with you all comes from the book that it's on the screen. It's Get Out the Vote, and it's by Donald Green and Alan Gerber. And what they've done is they've used a really strong data-driven approach to help us understand the effectiveness of various voter mobilization tactics, including door-to-door canvassing, emails, direct mail, phone calls, and a whole host of other methods to get out the vote. So I do want to lift this up as a resource to check out if you have not seen it already. I know we do have a book group going on right now. Some of you are part of that group, but we're really taking it a deep dive into these resources, or I guess these tactics. Where am I at on time?
Eileen,
I feel like I jumped in.
yeah, I'm going to pause and just ask everyone to please mute your microphones. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, some of that background noise is gone. So I just want to highlight, like I said, kind of a very quick overview of some of these tactics. Door-to-door canvassing is like the gold standard of get out the vote tactics. So it's proven to be one of the most effective ways to garner votes in any election. I know that many league members have done a door-to-door canvassing with other groups, but maybe not with the league before. So I do want to encourage us all to kind of give this a second look and think about if this is something that would make sense for your league. You know, maybe not this year with the pandemic, but maybe something in the future down the line. And I think something that we're all very good at is making sure that when we interact with voters, that it's a really personable, authentic interaction. And that is key in making any sort of contact with voters, but particularly door-to-door canvassing. And I know we're short on time, so I am going to kind of skip through some of this a little bit more quickly than I had anticipated. But the next tactic that I just want to make sure is on your radar is phone banking and text banking. Both are shown to be effective in increasing turnout. The state league has committed to providing more opportunities for, I guess, us at the state level to do some of the coordinating work so that local league members can just plug into it and just take off running with these tactics. Like I said, we're really great at having unhurried conversations with people about voting, which is really great. And something to also consider is how you can use either phone banking or text banking as a follow-up to other tactics that you might be using. So if you're holding a voter registration drive, if you could have a contact sheet where you capture people's names and numbers or some sort of contact information, possibly a pledge to vote card, this is a really great tactic to use to follow up with people, and it really does prove to increase the amount of people that turn out to vote. We're all really great at holding voter registration drives. It's always reaffirming to me to see things that we're already doing as being best practices. So I did want to make sure to lift that up, that let's keep doing what we're doing with the voter registration drives. And the data shows that for every 3 to 4 people that we help register to vote, that turns out to be essentially one new voter in that upcoming election. So, and we can, like I said, we can increase that if we do follow up as well. I did want to mention relational organizing. This is kind of a newer method, but something that I think that we should all take another look at. It has the potential to be as effective as door-to-door canvassing, which is the gold star of get out the vote tactics. And so, I think we all know that if we have somebody who's close to us, dear to us, tell us that our vote matters, or, is going to check up on us and see if we actually voted, we're more likely to take that action, whatever it is. If it's voting, if it's taking out the garbage, I don't know. Like, there's a bunch of different things that it could be related to. And I do want to mention that it's cost effective for us because the National League offers Outreach Circle for free right now to all local leagues. So if this is something you want to know more about, I highly recommend you getting in contact with their organizing team, and I can help support you in setting things up or also just making a connection with them as well. Okay. And then the final thing that I want to talk about as far as some best practices is talking to voters. So I know sometimes, especially for new volunteers, it can be overwhelming or scary to think about talking to voters. It's such an important thing. And, we don't want to put our foot in our mouth and say the wrong thing and I don't know, just mess up the conversation. I know for me, I have anxiety, and so that's something that I've had to work through. But it is reassuring to know that in general, what we say actually doesn't matter. If the point is to have the conversation and make that connection with people, it is really important to have a really concrete ask and say, can we count on you to vote? Or let them know that that's why you're talking to them. If you can help people walk through their plan to vote, that's also very helpful. It helps them visualize themselves as a voter, and can, by you walking them through the steps, you can help address any barriers that they might face, that they can think of, whether it's like transportation or just thinking about, okay, so I know I have to work, I know I have childcare, how am I going to fit it into my schedule, and things like that. And then also, as I mentioned, if you can tag these conversations on and follow up with people, that also increases their likelihood to vote. Okay, so as promised, I wanted to make sure to leave some time for discussion, for talking. I do have some discussion questions which we could open up to, but I think I probably should pause first and see if anyone has any questions for me.
I didn't see any questions in the chat. If you want to move ahead to your discussion questions.
Yeah, sounds great. So I know we have a really strong mix of people who have been doing voter services work and voter outreach work for years and years and years now. So one of my questions that I'm hoping to have you all answer is, what are some lessons that you've learned over the past year? And how are you going to incorporate those lessons into your plans going forward? And I think people know me, I'm not above. Oh, Jane, great. You want to share, Jane?
One of the big things I learned is to show up, to be present, whether it's a Zoom meeting, whether it's an outdoor rally. Be present and don't be afraid to have signs that have a message that's coherent and brief, colorful. That's all I wanted to say.
I would comment on community partnerships. They're invaluable. They get you invitations to community events where you can table along with, you know, the library and health organizations and so on. And whether it's a gay pride event in the park or a university residence hall, which we did outside this fall because of the pandemic, it's just so worthwhile. And then we've been growing our social media presence. So we really appreciate your support with that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I can't stress enough how important community partnerships really are, and allowing us to really expand our impact. So thank you, Barb. Wanda, did you want to?
Yes, I also have a question. I'm a full-time RVer, and there's a whole issue, and I don't know if anybody's doing anything about it, that we must have a group address. We cannot use a mailing address, even though the everything in Wisconsin, you know, our licenses, our taxes, our insurance, our everything is there. If we live in our motorhome and have a mailing address, we can't vote. And so we have to use an address that's just kind of bogus. For several years, I used my old address that was my home that we had sold. Now we had to get it new at my husband registered. We had to use where we were camped that summer at a campground. We're not there now. We could get absentee votes, but it's kind of crazy. And there's like, I don't know, 200,000 or 300,000 people that are full-time RVers in the country. There's no good way for us to connect with most of our states. So do you know if there's any work going on at the state level to fix that problem?
I will say, I do know that there are people who are full-time RVers, but I had, never really considered how that impacted their address to vote. I know that there are a lot of transient people and have given thought to that, but not particularly to the community of full-time RVers. But I think that that is something that now is on my radar, and I'd be curious to know if anyone else has worked with that community. Barb?
Yeah, I don't know a lot about it, but there were, I think, 13 votes in La Crosse that were questioned in fall 2020 because there were snowbirds in Arizona. They were in Arizona. I don't know if it was a community and they all decided to do the same thing, but they used a local La Crosse UPS store address. And
Right.
they were not ruled fraudulent, but it was incorrect. And I don't know that their votes counted. They weren't charged. So that
What
kind
happened?
of, Wanda, what you were just talking about sounds related. Maybe there is a problem with people just not knowing what address to use.
Well, what happened with us is, as long as it had a dirt address, but any mailing store like the UPS or our mailing store, which is our legal address now, it's what's on our licenses, it's what's on our, everything that's our legal address is this mailing site. And but the voter people, everybody else in the world recognizes it, credit cards, you name it. But to get our passport even. But the voting system is set up by the legislature. So when I contacted the Wisconsin voter the head office, they said, well, you need to get legislation passed to change that. And so I haven't tried to start doing that, but it's on my radar. I just wondered if anybody else was already working on it to say that we could use our mailing address as long as we had other proof of being residents in Wisconsin, because we got to be somewhere. And of course, the credit card people think we're somewhere, the passport people think we're somewhere, but we should be able to vote without using, it kind of seems, illegal for us to use an address that we don't live there anymore.
Yeah.
But
Wanda,
that's what
I
they'll
really
allow.
appreciate you raising this issue. I think I'm going to have the conversation move along, but I do think that it's really
Yes.
important that you put it all on our radars as something
Thank
to
you.
consider. My next question is, what's something new that you all tried in 2020 or 2021 that you would recommend others try? Jane?
I tried one of the texting apps. So you use your phone and you just start sending messages, and you just tap your phone and it sends messages, a specific message to as many hundreds or thousands or however many times you tap your phone, it does it automatically. So you don't have to dial or anything. It's extremely fast. You get some positive messages back and you get some very nasty messages back, but it doesn't require the dialing and waiting for a phone to ring and having a phone conversation. I found that a new method for getting through to voters, potential voters.
And we tried door hangers. Sounds kind of basic, and it's not really door-to-door canvassing like you mentioned, Eileen, but it's a little easier for volunteers. And we thought that we could see the wards where we did door hangers had very good turnout. So it was a simple door hanger we designed in Canva and had printed up, and had lots of volunteers distribute them for a couple of weeks. In both, we did 5,000 in the fall and 10,000 in the spring. We expanded it because we thought it was good. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our social media presence we've greatly increased starting in October 2020.
Barb, would you mind expanding a little bit more and talk about what are some of the key elements that you included on your door hanger and how did you decide which doors to go to?
Yes, I'd be happy to share one with you, but good question. We kept it very basic. It was two-sided. It had our league colors and vote with the date, bold of the main election. And then we had the 3 ways you could vote bulleted, and gave the dates of early voting, the absentee ballot, and the walk-in to your polling place. Big information, visual of the myvote.wisconsin.gov website, and a few other, important points, our website and logo, of course. So pretty basic, but I'd be happy to share with the group for later follow-up. And then we have one member in our league who's very adept with manipulating data, and he, I believe he got, what is the database where you can see your list of voters? And he's,
The van.
yes, and he sorted it by wards. And it was the wards where the city officials were being elected. And that's where we distributed. So.
That's great.
And he broke it up into neighborhoods so it was manageable for volunteers. And then he used, I don't know if it was like a Survey Monkey or another tool online for people to sign up for their blocks. But it worked really well.
That's great.
Eileen?
And I do, oh, sorry,
I
Deborah.
was just going to say, Annalisa Wagner has her hand up. I assume she has a question.
Yeah, I see Annalise, and I do want to pivot to you, but I do want to just mention one thing, because Barb mentioned the van, and so I want everyone to know that the State League has access to the van, which is the Voter Action Network, which is a database of registered voters and likely voters in Wisconsin. And so that's a way that we can support your get out the vote efforts, is by helping you poll lists and create these targeted lists. So just want to mention that. Annalise, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I was surprised about your saying that the phone is such an effective tool, because I have worked on phone messaging myself, and I must admit that I am also guilty of this. A lot of people just don't answer the phone, or they hang up when they hear that it's somebody calling about an election. They don't even give you the time. So I, in a sense, then I guess I was thinking that the texting is really more effective than the phone calls. And I guess I just like your opinion about that, because it doesn't square with my experience. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, personally, I like the text banking, because I find that I can reach more people, have more conversations. People who don't want to talk to me typically just don't respond. And if people maybe are rude, it's easier to, read a rude thing versus like to hear it on the phone. But there is kind of a self-selecting group of people that respond or like picks up the phone and is willing to talk to you. And so because of, I think, that self-selecting group, and also just the fact that when you can get somebody on the phone, it is actually a very effective way to encourage them to vote. I think that that's where that data comes from, where it's effective. And there have been experiments to see how effective it is, and that's just what the data says. And so I know sometimes there are things where I think, oh, this feels right to me, like this is what I want to do, and this feels good, and it seems like it's working. But I do like to rely on the data to know exactly like how effective I'm able to be with my time, because I know we all have limited resources, whether it's money, volunteer time, people's attention. And we don't want to burn out either by trying to do it all. So it's really important to make sure we're being cognizant of that. Peggy, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, Eileen, I just wanted to let everybody know that the Milwaukee League worked with the Milwaukee Election Commission, City Election Commission, and we developed this handout about ballot security and the integrity of our election processes. So it has good talking points. It's in English and Spanish, and I will get that to you.
Great. And then Ruth, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, Eileen, I was wondering if there wouldn't be a use for the combination of texting and phone. And this is targeting the same groups, you know, the same lists, but text so that you can weed out the ones that you know would be a real waste of your time and a lot of negativity. And the ones who text back, like, I would like to learn more, I'd like to talk to somebody, or it seems like they'd be interested in developing some kind of a relationship around this. I know that for my students, I used to use a Google Voice phone number, which is separate from mine, but it comes to the same phone. So it's easy for me to get messages or text through that number and not have my personal information out there. But when the students would call me, then they knew that that was a way for us to have a personal conversation about things that interested them. But I'm wondering if that might not be something that would work for other people.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting idea about how to use them more effectively in tandem. I know in our past, like text banking campaigns, we have referred people to the voter helpline that's really operated by the Dane County League and the Dane County Voter ID Coalition, but has grown to be a statewide resource. And so if people want to have a phone conversation with somebody to kind of walk through steps, we have worked, directed people to that. But I think that there is definitely space to make sure that our get out the vote and voter services work is more relational and making sure that we're building relationships so that not only are we encouraging people to vote in this election, but encouraging people to engage with the political process across the board and also join the league. Like we want, you know, more people to join. The electorate is certainly much more diverse than the league is in our current composition. And so we do a good job of reaching out to a lot of different communities and types of people, but I think we need to do a better job of making sure that we're inviting people to consistently engage with us as well. And obviously we're making strides towards that, but there's always room to do better.